Hi there. This morning we're going to run through our P6-Calculator tool. I'm Nicole Jardin, coming to you here from Calgary this morning. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. Now, let me explain to you why we built this tool. So one of our key strengths, I think, as an organization, we've been doing rollouts and whatnot for just about 30 years now. Has been the fact that we have a team of programmers on our team, and we've had that from the beginning. Now, we did that because we were doing integrations, but as things developed and over time, more and more of our clients wanted little tweaks and automations and things that P6 didn't do. So those were some of the common struggles. There were always little things that people couldn't do right out of the box with the software. So over time, Calculator just became a tool because we added this little piece of functionality, this little piece, and so on. So it became a tool that we started to brand and market and sell to people because we could see we could fill gaps the tool just didn't have. Now, one of the things why people use this software tool, this add-on to P6, is it brings consistency to their data, which is important when you're trying to do a portfolio, when you're trying to do earned value, when you're trying to do consistent reporting. That's important. And you may have many people on your team and you need that consistency. Now, when you want to get that consistency, you need to make things easier to take care of, right? So if you're integrating data, if you're pulling data from another system and you're integrating large quantities of resources or costs, you need to keep it easy. And sometimes keeping things easy is to program it, to automate it. It's not exactly what I would call artificial intelligence, but it's sort of fulfilling a bit of a gap, if you know what I mean. And I'll show you some examples so that things can be easier. So that's really what it brings to the table. The other thing, it just makes it easier to build out your projects, again, with that consistency. So that's the sort of thing that we're trying to help our clients with, just to make things better and easier to work with inside of P6. And then when it comes to changes, so we know once we've got a project plan in place, we start updating. And of course, things change. Priorities change. The order that you want to do the work in will change. You want to make it as easy as possible to deal with this sort of change that always takes place, good and bad, on projects. You want to make that easier to take care of, and you want to allow the software to do as much of that heavy lifting as you can. So those are really the gaps that you're going to find that we can fill in using something like P6-Calculator. Now, from that, the whole objective, of course, of putting all this information inside a tool like P6 is to get the project plan in such a way that the extended team can action it. So making sure you've got the data in a simple way for someone to action it is another thing that P6-Calculator does fantastically well. So I'm going to show you some examples of how that can come together. Okay, so these are examples. That's when you're looking at a webinar like this, that's the way you need to look at it. You might say, oh, that's not what I do. Don't take that sort of approach. What you want to do is look at the examples that I'm showing. These are real examples. They're all from different kinds of clients. And say, oh yeah, maybe I have that exact same problem. It's not the same exact words on the screen, but I do have this problem. And I'm going to show you some common examples that we've tackled with different clients. So that's really the way to approach this kind of a webinar. It's a food for thought kind of webinar. So how does this thing work? Okay, so as a user of P6, if your team has Calculator, you don't even maybe know that it's there, because it's doing the automations automatically for you. It's going to do roll-ups and roll-downs. It's going to take data from one field to put it to another that can be actioned. So it's doing all these sorts of things just as you work. So you may not even know it's there because it's right inside the P6 app that it's doing all these things. So I mentioned roll-downs, calculations. I'm going to show you some that do calculations of different tasks and put those values up at the project level where you can see it, where you can report on it. Okay, so it starts to become actionable. That's really what we're trying to do. If there's a gap, if there's a problem, if dates are falling off the rails, we want the right people to see that as fast as possible, and then they can action it. That's really what P6-Calculator brings to the table. So each time I do this webinar, it can be a little bit different because we've got a lot of different features in Calculator. So I'm going to show you a few examples. I'm going to explain how we define what we're trying to do. It's not always visible to the user. Sometimes it's in the back end, so sometimes it's visible, and I'm going to show you some of that. Then you define it, you set it up, and then it essentially calculates and does its thing. And as a user, you're going to see the outputs. Okay, that's important. We want to make sure you can touch the outputs and you understand where they're coming from. We can do all sorts of different things. Today, I'm not going to show you archiving. I'm not going to show you the loop detector, but we do have mini clips on those if those are of interest. I'm going to focus more on scheduling and changes in dates and having those dates flow up to the right places. I'm going to show you, I can show you some counts. I wasn't going to show you any of the costing because I did a webinar specifically on foreign exchange rates and that sort of thing. So if you're interested, let us know. We'll get you that webinar. It's also, I believe, on our YouTube channel. So I wasn't going to do those today. So I'm going to do some other ones. I'm going to do some auto scheduling, auto reprioritization. Some of the ones I'm going to show you are some of my favorites. And hopefully it'll give you some good food for thought. Okay, so let me go ahead and share screen. I'm going to flip over to P6. And I didn't bump my resolution, so let me know if this is clear enough or whether you think I should bump my resolution. What do you think, Shannon, Dan? Does it seem like it's big enough?
I have it on my large screen and I can read it.
Okay. Anyone in the audience, if you can't read it, let me know. I can bump my resolution, but I'll start like this and let me know if you can't see or if it's not clear. Okay, so let me set the tone of this first example. So you have lots of clients who have dates of activities within the project. So it could be key milestones within the project that they want to understand without having to go into the schedule and start to look at it and filter it and all that good stuff. So these are key dates that you want to see. And they're not the finish date. They're not the start date. And of course, that's what we only get really in P6 in the project level. So I'm starting here at the project level. So I have key dates inside that project that I want to be able to see in a simple way. Okay, so that's not easy to do. You have to open the project, you have to set filters up, you have to run layouts. You can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm saying it's not simple. It's not something that automatically is going to feed that data out to a simple chart like this, which could also be pushed into Power BI via P6 Reporter, for example. Okay. So in this example, we've got multiple projects. We've got some sort of construction finish date that is showing up here. And we're monitoring some other dates, and I'll talk about what those are. And we're seeing whether we're ahead or behind, okay? So P6-Calculator is doing all of this. It's watching these other dates. It's finding out the number of days. These are calendar days that we are behind, okay? They could be working days, but right now they're just flat out calendar days. And it's letting us know whether we're ahead or behind. So in this example, I'm 30 days ahead. In these two, I'm 134 and 104 days behind, okay? Very simple, easy for a manager to understand. Very, very nice kind of information, okay? Now, just about every client we work with wants something like this at the project level, okay? Now, when we see these greens, it means we're on schedule, okay? Now, we can control the flagging, okay? So is 30 days ahead a blue star, or is 1 day ahead a blue star? These are all things you can configure when we roll out Calculator, okay? So let's see how this thing works and how is it coming up with this information. So I'm going to go into the activities. And I've got more than one project open. It could be one project at a time. Again, we're adhering to the way P6 works. We're trying to give your team additional tools that just work for them using regular P6 things, okay? So we're using codes, UDFs, we're using scheduling, we're just using regular things in P6. Okay. So let's talk about what we're actually looking at. So there's a few different things that we've got going on in this layout. And let me explain what Calculator is doing. Okay. So first and foremost, we have what we call roll downs. So usually when you see this arrow pointing down, we're trying to use that to let the user know that it's a field coming from the project level. And it's showing up onto the activities. So if you've used P6 a lot, you may be familiar that not every field is available everywhere, which is always a challenge. Okay, so when I'm working in the activities, I can't see my project user defined fields. I can't do it. Okay, so I can create a field up there, but I can't see it in the activity window. So Calculator takes that problem away because we can push down or up virtually any field. Okay, so this allows you to put one data entry point at the project and we get to see it on every activity. Okay, so that's why you see in this example, these are different projects. So I've got one value for each project. Now you might say, oh, what's the big deal? I'll just type it and do a fill down. Well, if it changes, you got to keep changing it. So it could be a lot more manual work. Okay, so this saves time. Now, why do we need that field down here? Well, for a variety of reasons, right? The user might need to be looking at this field. This is an important field for them to be monitoring against. So that's why you would push it down into your activity window. It might be something we're going to calculate off of. Okay, so there's a variety of reasons why we do a roll down on a date field. We also have roll ups. So if you saw an arrow pointing up, it's going to take the data from the activity level. Even could be lower. It could be from the resource and expense level. And it takes that field and pushes it up to the activity, up to the WBS, up to the project. Okay, so we've got a lot of great functions in there, and we've used that for lots of different clients that are doing different kind of calculations that P6 doesn't do, and we need those values to go up to the project level. Okay, now the one I wanted to focus on, because this is the one that I was showing back here, okay, is we're taking an intermediate date. In this case, it's off this construction activity, this activity here. It could be off the sorry, it probably is actually off of this milestone, in this case, construction finish. So this is a common thing our clients want. They want some key milestones inside the project, and they want that date to go up to the project level so they can see it, because it's an important date. They want to see that, have that transparency. They want that simple reporting. So let me show you how this thing works. So if I change my construction, obviously this is going to change this end date. Now I just need to recalculate it, and it'll rejig it, okay? So you can see now this is calculated to the 29th of April. I can do the same thing on all these projects. So I can make some longer and I can make some shorter, okay? And then I just always reschedule. You can have auto scheduling on too. If you have large projects, you probably wouldn't want to do that, but I have a pretty small one here, so I could have turned that on. So these dates have changed. And then what I do is I hit refresh, and off P6-Calculator's running in the background. It's just going to start doing its thing. Oops. And then what I want to do is I want to see these change as a result. Now, I might have been too slow, so they might have changed already. Let's just see. So I was in project number 1, 29th of April. I think it was in May. Let's just go back to it. So I could look at these two. So we're expecting it to switch here to 16th of May. So it might take a minute because it's is running in the background and it's automated. And what we'll see in a minute is these dates changing. So it might take a few seconds here. So generally, this is a bit of a funny thing in demoing this because we want to see an instant result. Now, when you're using it, it will update. It might take a minute, it might take 5 minutes. And you just know that it's going to do its thing. Okay, there we go. So we're starting to see it changing. So it flipped from April to May. We're expecting March 27th, 5th of July, and August 1st. Okay, so that's what we have. So the key thing here is the benefit is coming out because we can now just give this to our manager every single day. No layouts, no fussing around. We can even push it right out through P6 Reporter up to Power BI. That can be snapshotted every single evening, and it can be out to the management every single day, very much real time, okay? Or if you're saying, well, that wouldn't really make sense for our business, that's okay. Some of our clients push them out once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. So whatever makes sense, but my point is that it can be very, very dynamic. Okay. Now, if you're in a turnaround, for example, and you have certain startup milestones that you want to be conveying, this is fantastic because you don't have to do any major lifting. It's right there for your management to see in a very simple grid. Okay. So this is the benefit. It can save you a lot of stress, a lot of time by having an automatic roll up. Now, the other thing that we have a lot of, okay, so not only do we have a key milestone we want pulled up to the project level so we can see it, we also have things that we want to calculate against that, okay? So for example, where am I against some key dates that we were given, okay? So we have clients who have different scenarios that they run. They have planned dates from scenarios. We also have lockdowns that they do for their maintenance plans, or for, in this case, it might be a drilling plan. Lots of different key dates that we're given that we want to see how we're doing against. So in this example, we have 2 of them. We have scenario 1, planned delivery. We have budget 2023. These are 2 key dates that we have been given that we want to monitor against. Now, in my example, I just pegged those dates. Okay, so it's a constraint that I use because it's a date that we've been given. It's not logic driven. The logic-driven date is this one here, the in-service date. So this is logic-driven. Now, we want to calculate against those. So these are not baseline dates, right? So we're not watching the baseline of this. We're watching against two totally different activities. Not really an easy way to do this. Even there's no global changes you can run. There's nothing easy to do this kind of monitoring in P6 out of the box. We get a lot of this kind of requests from our clients. So let me explain what we're seeing here. So I'm actually going to calculate my P6 in-service date versus my scenario 1 date. I'm going to calculate my P6 in-service. This is the flag. Okay, so this is the value. So the number of days that we're ahead or behind. And in this case, you can clearly see, hopefully, that the in-service is quite a bit later than these dates here. So they're behind, which means a negative value. So negatives in P6 are bad. That's the way we've put this together. Okay, so we're late by this many days. Now, not only did we want to track it against my scenario 1 date that we were given, we also want to track it against this budget date. So in this case, we had 2 key dates that we want to track against. Okay, so in this case, we're looking at the in-service date versus my budget 2023 date. Again, I've got a flag with it. Okay, so it's a good visual cue, and then you see how far behind you are. The other thing we wanted to do here was to track the difference between these two, okay, because they could change. The budget 2023 could get reset, and we want it to track against it. Okay, so that's what this third flag is. It's the difference between these two. And in this case, it's scenario 1 versus the budget. So it's a positive value because it's ahead of it. Okay, so let me change these, and then you'll see P6-Calculator do its thing. So the simple way I'm going to change this in-service date is I'm going to change this construction activity. I'm going to make it shorter, and I can come down here and I can make this one longer. So this one's going to go to 300. Okay, so those are 2 changes. And then I'm going to change some of these dates. So maybe my budget 2023 date wasn't 1st of December, and it's actually 15th of December. And I can also change my in-service date. Okay, so instead of November, not in-service date, my mistake, planned delivery date, let's put it to October. Okay, so I've made a few changes here. I want to reschedule to get it to recalculate all the basic P6 info. And then these are going to start recalculating. Again, it's not instantaneous, but it's pretty darn quick, and it would be much quicker than me having to do this on a bunch of projects, that's for sure. So I can just refresh this. So what do we expect to happen here? Well, on the one that I lengthened, it should go up. On the one that I shortened, it'll go down. And in this case, I brought this forward and I brought this backwards. So I should be ahead by more. So that's what you're seeing. So these have all changed. I didn't have to do anything to make those calculations, which I really wouldn't be able to do anyway with anything out of the box. So not only did it change right here for the activities, the key benefit is this is going to lift these dates, these calculations, and put it up on the project level. Okay, so I can refresh that. And so it's taking them from the bottom and bringing them up. Okay, so let's just give it a second. Okay, so this should change to 55, 208, and 153. So let's just give it another minute. Okay, so it does the bottom level first, and then it moves it up to the top. And of course, it's taking a bit of time, so just be patient. And then what you see is it takes those and puts them up here. So this is the key here, because then you can, again, push this out through P6 Reporter to your Power BI, to Tableau, to whatever your corporate standard reporting is. And it's much simpler to report this at this sort of level than digging into the activities with layouts and filters and the rest of it. And I don't know why it's taken so long, but we'll just give it one more try. And we do have a lot of utilities running in this database, so it's a bit of a timing thing. I might have just missed its cycle to run through this. So let's just try one more second. Okay, of course not. The joys of live demoing. Not a problem. We will come back to this one. Okay, I'll just give it a bit more time to run, and then I'm sure it'll get updated. So this scenario where we have these different points we want to monitor, we want to see them, we want to put those up to the project level, we have that sort of scenario with so many different clients. And so this is just a simple example of how this could work. Okay, we'll come back to this layout. And it's just taking longer than I want it to wait, so I will come back to it. Okay, so let me go to another type of scenario that lots of our clients have. So they have a required activity. I just want to see which layout I'm going to go to here. And I'm going to open some different, actually, let me go to Auto Logic. Let me do that one next. Okay, so I'm going to flip to another layout and talk about another thing that I think is pretty awesome. And I'm just working with a client right now doing an IT project that I think this could be pretty handy for. Auto Logic and sequencing based on priorities. So let me talk about the scenario, and then I'll show you how we work that scenario. So if you have work that you have a priority for, okay, you typically will start putting all this logic between the first sequence of work, first activity, the next, and then the next, and the next. But priorities can change. They can change a lot. If you're doing a year-long maintenance program or a rig program or track maintenance, operational maintenance of a plant, you put the order of work in, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done in that way. In this IT program, it's the same thing. We have certain scopes of work we're going to do in some sort of order, but it doesn't have to always be that order. Okay, it's a little more dynamic, if you will, than say, let's say taking a piece of equipment out where you have to unhook it, you have to take out the equipment, you might need scaffolding first. There's a very fixed order of the work. So we don't want to have to make our clients go through so much effort every time there's a reprioritization, changing all the logic. So one way we can do some prioritization is, in this example, we're using a date. So this is the date we think we're going to get that work done. Now this work is a rig example, but it doesn't have to be that, but that's what this example is. So we have the rigs, okay, and we only have so many drilling rigs. So in this example, we have 2, and we're covering geographical locations that are broken into Edmonton, BC, Calgary, BC, okay? So these are just groupings of the work. And in those groupings, we have more or less the order we think we're going to do it in because we have a priority. Okay, so what we have with P6-Calculator in this example is it's actually putting logic in for us automatically based on a few criteria. So in this example, it's the rig, which is going to be a resource, and I'll show you that in a second. And it's also using this order, the priority, which in our case is a date, but it could be a number. It could be a 1 to 10, it could be a 1 to 100, it could be something else. It doesn't have to be a date. This example, it is a date. So it's basically using these two pieces of info, in our case, the rig plus the priority, to come up with this order of work. Plus, it's also showing the location as well. So that's part of the mix, but the key drivers are these two fields here. So let me show that to you in action. I'm going to actually open some of these projects. And I'm going to show you it live, actually doing the changes, doing the calculations. I think I can actually come back here to show you that 155. So I'll do that in a minute. Okay, so let me actually go to the layout that's got the fields that I want to work with. Okay, so we're going to use this one here, the auto logic. Okay, actually, I'm going to show the auto resourcing and then I'm going to show the auto logic. They go together. Okay, so as I showed you a moment ago, I have a bunch of projects. Each project is a little mini sequence of work. So it's a drilling, construction. Key is we've got a sequence of work. And then that particular piece of equipment is the driver. So it is going from project A, or A2, I should say, to A3, to A4. So this is happening in sequence, this logic. And the P6-Calculator is doing it automatically for me. So if I say, okay, well, project 8, A8, drilling rig number 2 is doing the work. Well, maybe I've changed my mind for whatever reason. That's not the equipment that I'm going to put to do that work. I'm going to switch it to rig 1. So I'm going to swap it. So that's what this little button here lets me do. It lets me swap from one piece of equipment, in this example, to another. So I'm going to switch it. Okay, so you can see here the resource ID changed. Well, now what I would have to do if I didn't have P6-Calculator, I'd have to break the logic. I'd have to go figure out which project it's coming between, okay? And I'd have to redo the logic. It would be a lot of things that I have to do. But instead, we've programmed it in Calculator. So I've switched this rig from 2 to 1, and I'm going to watch it actually do a bunch of things for me. So it's going to also take this rig. It's going to put it in my activity code, and it's going to put it in a user-defined field, because we're going to use these two things to do a bunch of stuff for us. Okay, so I've switched that. It's just going to take a second here, and I'll come back to this. It'll show up in a minute. Now I'm going to go back to the project window, because what we're going to see is it's going to say, okay, this is not going to be done by rig 2 anymore. So it's going to move into rig 1, and it's going to go in the BC work, because that's the geographical location. So let me just see if it'll refresh for me. Okay, it's doing something. Okay, so it took A8 out of here. It moved it up. Now, based on this priority, okay, it sees that it's prioritized as the same date as A2. Okay, so it's going to come second after A2. And it's going to redo the logic. So it's going to make A2 logic go to A8 and then A3. So it's going to redo all that for me. What did I have to do? Not a lot. I just changed the resource, and I could change this priority as well. Okay, so I'll show you that in a second. Now, while we're waiting for it to redo the logic, I can now show you this. This got refreshed. Okay, so this, because it's the same project, that 55 came here, that 208, the 153 came here. So it just took a minute, but it's the same roll up from the bottom. Okay, let me go back to the activities. And let me refresh this window. And A8 moved out of the Rig 2 scope of work. So I just have to scroll up. And we can see it's positioned here after A2. Now, if you can follow this logic, you can see that there's a logic tie here between A2 and A8. I didn't do it. It didn't. Now, if you're not sure if you trust that, I'm going to do one more edit and you're going to see it in action. Okay. So obviously what I have to do is just reschedule it, and then you'll see the A8 work taking place here. Okay. So I did one edit really, and it did all the other heavy lifting. Okay. So if you can explain how the behavior works at your company, then we can program that same behavior. And then it's a lot less heavy lifting. Now, maybe my priority for A8 is not March 1st. Maybe it's later. Okay, so let's say something in May. So I'm in a meeting. I'm told, oh, we're not going to be able to do that one. It's got to go move down to May. I can make the edit. So it's now moved down. I can save it. I can just refresh it, and it's going to go off and it's going to redo that logic. So now A2 is going to go to 3, to 4, etc. And we should see the logic coming off of 6 at this point. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to the activities and we'll give it a chance to do its thing. And shouldn't take too long, but we'll see. And then what we should see is it's going to redo the order of this grouping, which is awesome. I don't have to muck about rearranging the code. It's going to do all that heavy lifting for me. And then what we should see is A8 will move down after A6, and the logic will be coming off of 6, not 2 anymore. Okay, so it's doing a heck of a lot of stuff. And if you've ever had to rearrange logic in a turnaround or in a major project, you know it can be incredibly time consuming. And even worse than the time consuming, it can be in a very tight timeline that you may have to make these edits. So that could be pretty stressful. Okay, so we'll give it a minute. This is doing a lot of stuff. And I think, you know, it's all just about catching the program while it's just about to do its thing. So, okay, give it another second. No pressure, computer. Come on now. People are watching. So this is one of my favorite utilities. We've got tons in Calculator. It's sort of my favorite tool that I love to show because it's been able to really help so many of our clients do so many little things. And this is quite a nice lift that this does. Okay, so you know, it's like watching paint dry. It takes longer when you're staring at it. Okay, we'll let it do its thing and then we'll come back to it. So as I mentioned, so we changed the date. So project A8 should now come after 6. 2 will go to 3, 4, etc. So we didn't change all of them. We just made one leap. Okay, not a problem. We'll come back to it. And I'll just move on to another example, and we'll just come back to it. It's just taking a little longer to run than I was expecting. Okay, so another thing that happens a lot with our clients is they want certain kinds of activities to be in every project. They have requirements for a variety of reasons, and I'll show you a maintenance type of example. And an integrated example. So it's an example from an integration from Maximo into P6. Now, when an activity comes in from an integrated system and you're doing weekly planning, an activity that has no predecessor on it will just land right in your current week. Now, you don't want that to happen. You don't want a bunch of new work orders that were created up in your system to just land in your work week that you're about to try and get the plan out the door. So in this example, the client has a weight activity. It's just a bucket. It holds the work out into the future, and it gives you the ability to not let things just land in your work week. Okay, I'm going to move off of this one. We'll come back to it. I was hoping while I did the intro, it might have done its thing, but it's taking a little longer than I was expecting. Okay, let me just move to another layout and we'll show you that example I was just describing. Okay, so it's going to be this one down here. Okay, so we're going to focus in on these projects here. Okay, so this hold activity. So if you want to, this idea is a pretty good idea. If you want your work to come into P6 and it's being integrated, but you don't want it to land right in your work week, you need to hold it out into the future. So one way to do it would be to put a bunch of constraints and push the work out. That's quite a bit of manual lifting. So rather than doing that, okay, you could use this sort of idea where we have a hold activity and we have the activity automatically logic tied to any new work that comes into the project. Okay, so again, it's all P6-Calculator lifting that we're doing there. So let me just get another layout and I'll show you what I'm describing. Okay, so here we have a few different projects. Now, you can see some of these projects have a green check mark saying the weight activity exists and it's correctly configured. This one is saying we've got some problems. So again, we're using Calculator to give some visual cues to make it super easy for training a new scheduler. So a senior scheduler can look and help, so it's very, very simple. So this is saying we've got this activity is missing. So we need one there. So we're missing one. So I can correct that. And this one is saying we've got more than one activity with that exact same name. So that's not okay. That's not working properly. So these two are both problems that we need to resolve. So I'll show you how easy this sort of stuff is to do and how fantastic these sort of automations can be. It saves a lot of work. So this one is missing the activity. This one has two of them. Okay, so maybe the user made a mistake and put it in the wrong place, right? So we ended up with two here. And that doesn't work. Okay, so it doesn't know how to put the logic tie in. So the one that is working properly, this top one, see we've got a logic tie off this hold activity. Okay, now I didn't reschedule this because I wanted you to see how it works. So when I reschedule, what you would expect is all these two sequences of work will be pushed out here. Okay, so when I'm doing my work week right here off my data date, you don't want these new tasks sitting there. That's just throwing noise and confusion. So we don't want that. So we're going to have them automatically move out. So I'll reschedule in a minute, but let me show you how this works. So we've got two in here. We don't want two. So it might be as simple as me dragging and dropping one of them out of there because I did it wrong. I put in the wrong project, and that should do the trick. That should get me one in here and get me one in here instead of two. Okay. Now, the other thing we monitor is the activity type. That's what this one is saying. Okay. So it's, if you need a certain kind of activity, like a level of effort or a WBS summary or a task dependent, we can monitor that with Calculator. Okay, so we can flag those sorts of things. You make the rule, we can flag it. We also watch what the name of the activity is, okay? Because we have reports that run off of that activity name or the activity code. We usually use codes because names could easily be updated by mistake. So it's actually the code as well, okay? So we're monitoring all those sort of things with Calculator and then flagging, okay? So if you've ever worked in a large group with lots of projects, it's easy to have things coded wrong. That messes up reports. It could mess up all sorts of things. So you want those things highlighted easily so you don't have to go hunt for them, okay? Now you can do a lot of that with layouts, but if you've got lots of projects and lots of users, sometimes things fall through the cracks with layouts alone. Okay, so let me go back up here. And what we're hoping to see is some of these move from red to green, okay? So I'll just update this. Okay, so it moved off of red, which is good, but we still have something it's not happy with. So it's now gone to a yield sign. So it's letting me know what the next problem is. So it's not only giving me a visual cue, it's also giving me some information. Okay, so it's telling me that the weight activity is wrong. It should be named this way. Okay, so it's not matching the naming convention expected. Okay, so I could go fix that and get these all to green. So the benefit of this is the senior scheduler here of this group. He has 5 or 6 layouts that he runs every morning, pops them open, and if they're empty, he knows everything's good. If he sees any flagging, he knows something needs to be addressed. So it's such a simple process for him that when he's not there, someone else can do it very easily without a lot of coaching. Okay, so there's huge benefits to these little automations. And that's another type of example that we run. So we're monitoring activity types, activity codes. We're monitoring that there's multiple activities with a name that collides. We're missing activities. So we can do all that kind of monitoring and flagging. Okay, so let me go back to the last example and see if that logic was able to do its thing. And then I will wrap up with just one more simple counting example. Okay, let me just go back to the right layout. Sorry, I'm going to the wrong one. Logic, okay, D1. Okay, let's go back to the logic. All right, and I closed those projects, so I will reopen them. And then we'll take a look at whether, and I'll go back to the other layout, whether the logic did its thing. And it should be D1, D2. Okay, should be back. All right, so let's see. Yes, looks good. Okay, so let me collapse this so you can hopefully remember where things were. So we had 8 after 2. We changed the date priority, so 8 was now coming after 6. So you see it's moved it down. And let's just go take a look at the logic so you can see what's gone on. So I don't see, and let's pop open A2. So I don't see any more logic from A2 to A8. That's gone because now it's redone the logic off of A6. Okay, so you can see the logic coming here. So the only thing I need to do still is to schedule it. So the dates of the logic gets recalculated, the dates get recalculated, and it moves. Okay. So if you've ever had to change logic, you know that would have taken me probably at least 10 to 15 minutes at least, and maybe more, because I would have had to unhook A2, hook A2 to A3, unhook A6 to A8, and hook A8 to A7. So easily, I mean, obviously depends how fast you are, but I'd say that's at least 15 minutes to half an hour just to make that one change. And then if you've ever been in this position, you go into the next meeting and they say, oh, it's not going to be in May. Now it's going to be in April. And you got to do it again. And you got to do it again. And there's a chance you do it wrong, right? So this is where automating things that you know you do a lot, that can be a bit tricky, can really go a long way. Okay, not only to a better quality product, to a lot less stress and craziness, and it could even save you having to get more people on the team. Okay, but the real point is to make the job done, make it be done better, easier, more efficient, and less error prone. Okay, I think I have time for one more. I'm not looking at the questions, so Dan, if there's any questions, just jump in and we can move over to those. I'm going to do one more because this one is a pretty common type of question that we get to is, can you count things for me? So let me just move over to that one last one and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so this last example we're going to do for today is a counting kind of thing. So in this example, we want to count how many work orders are in each project. Now, not only are we counting them, well, we're also tabulating them for you. Okay, so this is saying we have 3 work orders. This says we have 4, and it's giving us the list. Now you might say, well, why do I need that? Well, if you've ever, sometimes you don't know what project a work order is in. So this will allow you to search and find it in here. So that can be super handy. It can also go out to other reports. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons why listing it can be useful. Now, in our example, we listed it in field. You could also list it into a notebook. Okay, that's a little less handy because you can't search it as readily. Okay, so there's different ways we can do this. So what is it actually counting? So let's actually open one of these projects. And let's just take a look. So these are really simple examples just for demoing, of course, demoing purposes. So in this example, we have 4 work orders, and it's counting those and also showing them to us, okay? So let me just go ahead and copy one of these. And in my example, I'm just going to change the number. Okay, now this could be coming from an integration. Typically, you know, you might have an integration from Maximo or SAP, JD Edwards, etc. And you're having that auto count and give you some feedback. Okay, so I just edited that one, got a new one in here. So we should see this actually update. Now, in the last examples, P6-Calculator did its thing automatically. Now you might say, well, I wouldn't want it to do that. Maybe I want it to wait till I'm ready. So we also have some of these where we action it. So the scheduler can action it. So this is the example here. So it's not auto counting until I actually tell it to. So I actually say, go ahead, go and do the counts, okay? And then it'll go off and do its thing. So we have both options that we've used with a variety of things with our clients, depending on what makes sense, okay? So it could make sense for someone to action it. And then what we should see is it should get to pass. So it, let me just show you that field again. So we use this format for most of our things. So go lets us know we've actioned it. pass means it worked, and fail means there was some sort of problem. Okay, usually with a note letting you know what a problem could be. Okay, so we have one that I didn't show you today. It's a loop detector, and a loop detector will go and see if there's any loops in your project and flag them for you. Okay, so you can go and take a look at them. Those are really valuable when you have auto scheduling in the middle of the night, that sort of thing, as part of your process. But if you have a loop, it can't schedule it. Okay, and then sometimes you get an error message and you don't know what's going on. This is why we built that tool. Okay, so this one ran. So it's a very simple one. So it now says there's 5 work orders, and it gave me a list of those. And it says it passed, so it was able to do the processing. Okay, so another really simple one, but this can be pushed out to P6 Reporter, into Power BI, and then you've got different counts that you're doing. Okay, so you have maybe different counts per project. We could count how many work orders are completed, how many work orders are in progress. So this is not counting activities, right? P6 will already count activities started, in progress, and planned, but it can't count the code or the UDF and how many of those are in progress or planned. Okay, so we're adding functionality to P6 with this. Okay, I better wrap up because I see we're just about finished our time. So let me get back in, and no questions. So I don't know if that means it was too confusing. Hopefully that's not the case. I know there's a lot to cover, and maybe my enthusiasm maybe do too many, but hopefully you got some ideas of the sorts of things that P6-Calculator can bring to the table for your group. Okay, so anything you do often, lots of people are doing it, and could be problematic in terms of timing, stressfulness, very time consuming. You know, these little things that we've shown you save our clients hundreds and hundreds of hours in a year, if not thousands of people time doing the work. Okay, so that's really the benefit, let alone the potential benefit out to reports and whatnot. So it's very easy to use. The tools are all running in the background. You saw that I had layouts that highlighted things that I needed. Very, very easy to use. It is, yes, so P6-Calculator is a tool that Emerald has built, so it is an add-on. It's a separate software tool. It's not an Oracle product, it's our product. We've built it, we sell it separately. It's not per user, it's per amount of stuff that you want done. Okay, so it's what we would call a point system. It is an add-on separate purchase to P6. Okay, so I gave you lots of examples. Hopefully, you know, you found it kind of interesting, the kinds of things that you could add into P6. The price depends on how much different things you want P6-Calculator to do. So we have different packaging. We have a standard package, we have a professional package, and a corporate package. So I can't give you a price. It depends on what you want. Okay, so if you only want to run 2 or 3 things, it would probably be the standard package. If you want 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 utilities, it may need to be the corporate package. So we'd need to have a bit more of a conversation around that to have a better idea of the pricing. So if you do want to have more conversations around that, just let us know. I'm going to put up a poll that you can answer, and that helps us know if you want us to reach out. You can also reach out to me or Donna if you're in Philippines or more in the Asia Pacific zone. You can also reach out to Donna Ureta. She's our regional manager there. You've got my info there as well. Again, thanks for spending the last hour with us. Hopefully you saw things that could be interesting for your organization. If we didn't do an example that met some of the things you're struggling with, just let us know, because we've done many and I'm sure there's many more out there. Okay, I will stop the recording here.